All right, hey, welcome to Shop Talks, which is a presentation of the Ink Kitchen. Go to inkkitchen.com and you can get free information. And go to our YouTube channel. Ink Kitchen's YouTube channel has a lot of videos like we're going to make right now. It's all free, and it's free because of sponsors. Los Angeles Apparel, AlphaBroder, Stalls, Transfer Express, Reese, Hirsch, and Fairweather Johnson, and this show, Impressions. So I'm with my buddy here, Dave Connor, who is from Stalls/Transfer Express, and we are going to talk about the most common mistakes made in heat pressing.
And there's a lot. There's a lot of mistakes that we see in heat printing. And
all right, we only have an hour, so let's get to some of the main ones here, Dave. How about that?
We only have an hour? I thought we only had 20 minutes. So, and I think before we really get started with some of these issues, that we see a lot of this prevalent because heat printing has become such an accessible way for anybody to get into the apparel decorating industry. It's a low investment. It is not a humongous learning curve. Of course, some of these mistakes are going to be the things that we talk about that are the learning curve, but it's not like inks, emulsion, like screen printing on your kitchen table and spraying emulsion out in your bathtub when you're 20 years old.
Well, the interesting thing is that it's like low barriers, but also the most advanced shops also have heat transfers now more than ever. So anyway, let's get into it here. What are some common mistakes made in heat pressing?
So the first one that I have to talk about is not every transfer is the same. So I say not all heat transfers are created equal, and that's really the thing. Like a lot of people will start, we've seen so many people start with like a Cricut and like an iron, right? The most rudimentary, like basic way, and I don't recommend starting that way. You're not gonna have a good time. You don't have those consistent, repeatable results. But they think one setting is gonna be the same for all different heat transfer types, so you're gonna have a bad time. So not all heat transfers are created equal. You have to use the correct recipe, that correct time, temperature, and pressure. The main three components to a good application.
Let's hear those again, because those are very important.
Time, temperature, and pressure. And they all vary based on what transfer type that you use. At Transfer Express and Stalls, we have well over, if you count all of the emblems and patches, we have well over probably 30 different transfer types you could choose from. Now there's basic categories, and I don't want to be confusing with that, but breaking down those basic categories, there are a wide array of different application settings based on adhesives or even the fabric type that they're printing on. So those three main, I always call them the trifecta, because they're like a tripod. If you remove one of the legs, it's gonna fall over. Or like a recipe for a cake, the heat printing recipe of time, temperature, pressure. If you go to bake a cake and you say, well, we don't need sugar for this, it's not gonna be the result that you're intending.
Also, you cannot just bake the cake at 500 degrees because you want to make it fast.
Exactly, yeah. There's no real speeding it up because then you start to burn off adhesives. You start to overcook them or undercook them, or even start to get burning the transfers out or damaging the fibers of the shirt. So I always recommend setting the settings specifically for the transfer type that you are decorating with, because even say I see a direct-to-film printer there, I could look over there and see a direct-to-film printer. Like, I guarantee they probably apply at different temperatures, different times, and maybe even, when we talk about pressure, probably a medium pressure, but one might be a hot peel, one might be a warm peel, or one might be a cold peel. So having a good time and having a good application is dependent on following that specific recipe for what you do. And that is probably the number one mistake that we see out there.
All right, what's another one?
So another one is gonna be placement. So a lot of screen printers, you get to set the job up, you know how you're loading the shirt, you do it all the time. And hopefully you're not going through an entire run with bad placement. But I think as cause of like this, brand new to the industry, they look at a t-shirt and go, I want to put it on the center of a t-shirt, right? And then they put it on the center of a t-shirt, which I don't know about you, is not necessarily a flattering spot for people to be looking for a print on my shirt. And I've had shirts that I've designed, I've had shirts that I've believed in a cause and donated my time to a nonprofit that I would love. There's sponsors on the back, it's something very near and dear to me, but because that print's down here, I never wear it. And so as artists, as creatives, as printmakers, as entrepreneurs, we want to make products that people are actually going to want to wear, right? So placement plays such a large role into that. You see that, like, I mean, even like left chests, when they start going down here or start going into an armpit, like, I can't wear that, not just because I'm a decorator and can be embarrassed by the placement of my shirt, but learning the proper techniques for placement. And I mean, there's tons of resources out there, but
although it's very common. My kids hate going to anywhere there's t-shirts. They'll be like, isn't that a cool looking t-shirt? I was like, no, it's printed too low. and better too high than too low, I'll say.
Yes. Even so, like my shirt, for example, here, like it could be a little high in the placement itself, but if it was down here,
no go.
A no-go. But left chest is something specific too, while we're on the topic of placement. Have you noticed that left chests have been like moving up in this like digital streaming age, the Zoom calls that we're all on now?
So it'll show in a Zoom call.
Exactly, yeah. Where like you're always like, you're just the bust up, you know, and where like, if I saw it with a lot of
Your shirt only has to look good from here up.
That's right. Yeah, I saw it with like Twitch streamers and gamers and stuff that are making jerseys where like they want the logo, I mean, almost on their shoulder up here.
I think you need little patches that stick up on your shoulder.
Just a little
like a bird. Maybe that's the next thing.
All right, nobody take that idea. We got to patent that right now. Figure out how to decorate that. You listening, Rock? But pull something up like that. So like, I mean,
actually, you know, one thing we do is also, sometimes you cannot tell just by measurement. Like we tape, if we're going to heat transfer, just tape one on with tape. Take it off the press from where you thought you were going to put it, have someone wear it, and see how it looks. I mean, the ultimate test is how it looks. Because sometimes, for example, some designs like got some little part that sticks up. So what part are you measuring from down? Even if the customer told you where's the top?
And that brings a great point to placement, right? It's
Plus
like
you have that little tool. What is that thing?
It's that
awesome.
visual weight. Yeah, that little t-shirt ruler. I actually went to go grab one, and the education room was being used right now. But those tools, right? So there's tons of tools to be able to do that. You mentioned taping a transfer onto your shirt. I recommend.
Don't ruin it, right? You can look ahead of time.
Yeah, you're not to mistake it, or even take a piece of paper, cut it down to a 3x3 for that left chest, tape it on a shirt. Tape it on your buddy. Tape it on a mannequin. If you don't own a mannequin as an apparel decorator, go find a TJ Maxx or some apparel store that's closing, retailer, and go buy one for like $50 because they're incredibly expensive if you just buy them offline. So always keep an eye out for some like department store or something closing, and go get a bust of a mannequin. I go to it all the time. I named mine Marcus the mannequin. But I'll throw, I did a TikTok on it. I did a video on it on YouTube where I throw a t-shirt on him, and that's what, I know he fits a medium shirt, and I size it appropriately. And then you can even see, like, I mean, a lot of printers out there, your favorite method of measurement, is it your fingers?
Yeah, 3 fingers.
3 fingers down from the collar. I do 4 fingers then for a left chest, so it sits in that that area, or that's to the top of the graphic, right? So I use my fingers all the time. So yes, using rulers is a great spot to get started when you're just getting started. But then when you start getting in that production run, you don't want to be using a ruler every time. It's slowing the process down. Time is money. We want to be making money and making effective use of our time. So then when you start getting through, you need to be able to just throw your fingers down or eyeball it. But that first placement, that paper, that cut out, the transfer itself on a paper carrier or a clear carrier, you tape it right there. You get to see and then go, oh, it is to the top of the graphic. It's just 4 fingers down. It's aligned directly to the collar line. You start to see these measurements on the garment where you're easily able to replicate that and get those consistent, predictable, repeatable results that I think whether you're decorating with screen printing, direct-to-garment, or heat printing, that is important for you.
All right, what else?
Fabric compatibility. Next up on the list. So just kind of very similar to what not all heat transfers are created the same. Fabric compatibility plays such a large role in what heat transfer you should be choosing. If you're going to be printing on like 100% cotton, that's fine. A lot of transfers are going to print to 100% cotton, absolutely no problem. Even high heat, you could put that thing to what, like 400 degrees, 420 degrees before you start to really mess with the cotton fibers. However, if you're trying to use, say, plastisol screen printed transfer that applies at 370 degrees on a 100% polyester. Sanmar's far away, but Sport Tech, right? Love Sport Tech garments, but sometimes you look at them wrong, they scorch. And so it's like you need to know to use the right heat transfer. And so when you're using a heat transfer like direct to film that applies at 290 degrees, a screen printed transfer with a adhesive formula that applies at that low 290 degrees, now you could decorate on those harder to decorate garments without damaging the garment.
Or dye migration.
No dye migration, yep, especially with those heavily dyed polyesters or sublimated garments that you're going to see like that you start to melt the fibers instead of just bending them, because you'll see those press marks on screen printing presses and stuff too. But knowing the difference between them two is a completely different animal rather than like knowing the right transfer type to use. But you see, I mean, there's a lot of like, even say direct to films, right? It applies to spandex, lycra, polyester, cotton, all of these, but then applies at a temperature of like 350 degrees, where it's like, it could stick to it, but are you realistically going to use that? So always be sure that you're checking the application temperature and testing the garments to make sure that it's compatible with that. Now, some of them too, when we talk about fabric compatibility, they'll stick, right? And they look perfectly fine. This is like worst case scenario. Then you ship it out to the customer, they wash it once and it's gone, right? It's just washing right off. Or people who are burned, I mean, I was just out talking to Brian Geffen, Duds by Dudes out in San Diego, California. Absolutely awesome shop out there. And he calls them heat applied products. He can't even say heat transfers, and he changed his mind on the way that it fits into the decorating business. But so many people were burned by a soccer mom with a Cricut who applied it wrong to not the right application temperature, not to that recipe, just winging it, or not even knowing what that iron is set at, you know? That's why you have to use a heat press that has the consistent temperature and able to have that pressure. But so many people are burned by it that they have this connotation like, heat transfers? And even how many years ago did that really start to shift here in the decorating industry, that like heat transfers became this like, oh, instead of just the cherry on top, no, this is a flavor of the sundae.
That's a good one. All right, what's next?
What's coming up next so we're going to go back to pressure. One element of this is no obstructions, right? No obstructions on the platen area. So a smooth, flat, even printing surface. You definitely don't want to have hoodie seams. And I love going on TikTok. I probably spend too much time on TikTok, right? Just scrolling. And to be honest, a lot of my TikTok is apparel decorating stuff. I don't have my own personal one. I run the Transfer Express one, and that is my personal TikTok. So I go look at people decorating at their home or in other businesses, or people getting started, or people trying to show off and teach other people stuff. But they'll leave a collar on the printing area because they want to see where the collar is to place the garment, and then they're printing over the collar. And then you see that peel as soon as they peel it up on the TikTok, and it's like it's lifting right away. But it's because you're affecting one element of that recipe. With a kangaroo pocket on a hoodie, you need to isolate that printing area. You're not going to have your squeegee over those humongous seams. I mean, okay, maybe we will with screen printing sometimes with a zipper platen or a closed zipper, but you're not going to have that perfect smooth print.
So what's the solution?
So the solution for isolating those print areas could be as simple as you've seen those sublimation mouse pads that are just white polyester on that kind of open cell rubber foam. Get one of those. So you're able to raise the print area. Or in that case of a lot of those TikTok decorators, just move it off, you know? You could keep the collar on the platen when you are placing the garment, because, I mean, even like that ruler that you mentioned that follows the collar shape, you could place that on there, and then as you need the collar on the surface area of the platen, place the graphic before you print. You're rolling that thick seam, you're rolling that collar off. And it's kind of funny to see when you see, like, I mean, I've even purchased stuff from like Amazon that was maybe a direct to film print or something, and the collar has that platen mark on it where you see like right where it was on, and the rest of the collar as it goes up and off is no longer scorched or has that pressure mark on it, and you throw it in the washer and it comes back to life. But still, I know that print is not as durable as it can be because there was a seam somewhere affecting the pressure.
So you have seams, buttons, zippers, collars, all those things, right?
Yep.
You build up around them.
Absolutely. And say something like this, maybe this polo that I'm wearing right now has a plastic button, I think, but maybe it's not melting under 290 degree heat, 300 degree heat. If you're ever printing on baby onesies, youth apparel, stuff like that, those little plastic snaps, Oh, not a chance. You look at them wrong and they start to melt, right? So you want to be sure you're isolating that area or it's completely off the platen. One of my favorite things, because like say you're putting that mouse pad in there, right? Or you're using a heat printing pillow, so like some of those seams could fall down in that area. But with like the mouse pad, if you have a run of 100 shirts, you're putting that mouse pad in and taking it out of that shirt every single time. So 100 shirts, that's 200 extra steps that you're taking, and that's adding so much time to it. So you don't want to be doing that. So in that case, a heat press with a smaller platen. You could get interchangeable platens for many models of heat press out there. So being able to change that to a 6x10 size or a 4x4, knowing I'm just decorating a whole bunch of shirts right here, to be able to do it. Even there's platens out there that allow you to print the inside tag at the same time as a front, or you could get that hoodie pocket off because it's a smaller area, an 11x15 or something like that, you know, where you're getting out of that range of from where the hood starts to the pocket there. So there's ways to isolate the print area. So regardless if you're doing, if you're only doing a couple sleeves, you don't have to go out and buy a couple $100 platen. Use the mouse pads, but the time saved in investing in like that upgrade for your own heat press, the capabilities, is more than worth it.
All right, check that list.
Check that list. We're going to keep going down the list. All right, this one is not just heat printing. This is any apparel decorator. Pantone colors and checking the color on the garment itself. How many times have you been like close to like a tone-on-tone print, or you're looking for a little bit higher visibility? A customer says like, we want this color, and you don't check an ink swatch against the actual fabric color of the garment. You see all the time on supplier websites, they try to get as accurate as possible, but man, ink colors differ and it's RGB, and then you bring it into a CMYK print because you're designing for a digital process, and now your colors are shifting on screen, and now you're shifting the color of that RGB file you pulled from sanmar.com, and now it's sitting there and you're like, oh yeah, this looks sweet, it's Pantone 185, and then it comes time to print it, and you go to all this, and you only know this. You only figure out you screwed up and didn't make a good choice when it's printed. There's no way to catch it before then unless you're using a Pantone book, specifying that color to the ink garment itself, or specifying the ink color to the garment itself, or specifying another swatch book with like standard ink colors for threads, or even screen printed transfers, digital transfers, using a swatch as a reference to not make that mistake.
Amen, brother.
That happens a lot in any type of printing. In your shop, in your experience, have you ever had that where you like a customer specifies a color and you go, let's switch it to this for more contrast?
Yeah, customers want a lot of things that are stupid. Is that what your question is?
And you guide them as a decorator, that you guide them to bring that expert advice to...
We keep the snarky comments to ourselves, but then we advise them nicely. Yes, we do.
Yeah, give them a good idea to be able to make a good choice. So next up after that, this is, again, just kind of more of an apparel decorating thing, but it comes to, when we're talking about heat printing or apparel decorating, is accurate proofs and mock-ups, right? So I have this great example, and I put it in a YouTube video, and I probably could find the photos on my phone of what I did. But essentially, my wife was looking for one of those like kind of throwback like 90s graphics where it's real big, right? You have all the color, like the I want to almost say like the race car style stuff, right? And so I think it was actually like a stock car racing shirt, right? So she buys it on Amazon from a third-party reseller who is using direct-to-film, and I only know this because I saw the shirt and I felt it and went, oh yeah, it's direct-to-film, right? So it looks huge. The photo in the product listing is flat, and this is a brand running their own stuff. It's a flat laid shirt. It looks like it's shoulder seam to shoulder seam. When that arrived, it was a 6-inch by 6-inch print.
Whoa.
And it varied so much.
That's
and so
a no-no.
In the video, I think I have that listed as like, if you're going to provide a mock-up, if you're going to go through the work, right, to do that mock-up, make it accurate. You're never going to get the colors to be specific because people are going to look at it on screen versus looking at it in real life. So you could get as close as you can. Don't kill yourself over it. But placement and sizing, that's not something that's going to change from screen to being produced. And I found even mock-ups for me working with a heat press, I like to reference them because sometimes it's days or sometimes even weeks by the time that you get that approval on the job to you actually running it. So you forget like, oh, what did we tell this guy? Oh, he wants it he wants it a little bit higher because he's a streamer instead of just going like, oh, I'm going to do standard left chest. So being able to call out specific anchor points is a good point to say, yeah, 1.5 to 3 inches down from collar, standard placement. I know I'm 2.25 inches. I think I've measured my fingers a lot as it comes to making a guide. That ruler that you talk about is sized literally to Dave's fingers.
We do have to sometimes, we have a thing in our proofs that tells them, like, something about don't look on your phone. Like, I mean, I love the customers where we send a mock-up and they're like, can you move it? I know they're using their phone and they say, can you move it up like 1/4 inch? No, we cannot. Like, I know that you looked on your phone and I know that we cannot, as human beings, place it that carefully.
Yeah.
I don't know. You gotta steer your customers.
But that manages the expectations because
No, and at least you better at least start with an accurate thing. If they're doing a dumb thing like look at their phone, you better at least start with an accurate mock-up.
yes, and in most cases, like the customer will trust the professional opinion. They're not an apparel decorator, and sometimes when they are, you say, hey, you make sure you sign off on this, but there's always an inherent sense as decorators of any kind, whether we be heat transfer decorators or screen printers, that people essentially give us money, right, to say, I want this. And we bring their vision from an idea in their head to a finished product. How terrible is that to waste the time and energy producing that product than for them to say, that's not what I was thinking. So that mock-up is that first step. It builds trust, especially if you're just getting started out as a decorator. It's building that trust with your customers so they're going to trust that you got it, man. That's exactly what I was envisioning. And a lot of times I find it helps sell too. So whether you're going straight to the brand and you want to represent that what somebody's going to buy is going to look exactly like what it's supposed to be, or you're a custom decorator and you're showing your customer this is bringing the idea to life, it needs to be accurate. And so there's a lot of ways that you could go about it. One of my favorite ways is a mock-up with a grid, right? So bring a mock-up, bring a grid together, and so that you could actually see inch for inch. Measure from the bottom of the collar to that bottom seam on a medium, right? On a medium garment, and it's 22 inches or whatever it ends up being, right? Size a grid to 22 inches, so now you could turn that on and off in a layer in Photoshop, turn it on and off so you could accurately measure and even place on the garment exactly like how you're going to print it. And that's going to get you super close on screen. But what is your, you say you've been in decorating apparel since dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? What has been your kind of general terms of service variance, tolerance, and shifting? Because you said that 1/4 inch is out the window. We can't guarantee that.
Well, this is funny that you say that because I've been trying to work with the Printing United to make standards, or I've actually thought about making my own because there isn't a standard. You know what I mean? Like, you can argue till you're blue in the face, but what's an acceptable reject rate on a customer's garments? You know, we tell people what it is, but there's no standard one, and there's no standard on how far off. Is a 1/2 inch over 6 inches too much? Too little?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and we're all using the same decoration methods too, so there really should be
There should
some
be
kind of
standards.
standard.
There are not.
So you're doing the Lord's work now.
No, we really do need standards that we don't have them.
Yeah.
That's the real answer. And you have to decide almost on every customer how fussy they are. And, you know, I don't know how many times I've told you, human beings load these on the press. Human beings sewed them. They're not straight. You know, it's not straight. Not straight to what? The bottom of the shirt, the side of the shirt, the neck, the label in the back. What is it?
Yep.
What's it not straight to?
And also, human beings themselves, if you really start to look at the shape of a body, they're not straight either. So somebody's shoulder's a little bit lower than the other one. There's all these variances when it come into it, and I know like one of the
Sometimes
first.
it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
We've had designs that flat look crooked and on a person look straight and vice versa. And all you can do, we had one where it was Coney Island Brewery, and there's a tower, sort of like the Eiffel Tower, comes to a point, and if you're off like 1/8 of an inch, it shows. So all we could do was tell them, you cannot reject these. They're going to sometimes look crooked. Like, you know what I mean? Human beings sewed them. Human beings are going to load them. Some of them are going to look crooked. You want us to do this job or not? Because then you can do it. If you later try to sell them on that idea, it doesn't work. A lot of accurate decoration has to do with customer service ahead of time.
Yep.
Managing
And setting those expectations. Yeah.
That goes back to your mock-ups, accurate mock-ups.
Yep. And that sense of trust. But it's funny, one of the last print shops that I used to work at, there was times all the time they'd open the box and go, it looks terrible. And the first thing is, did you put one on? And they'd be like, no. And then they put one on and be like, oh, I'm sorry, they look great. Click, they hang up the phone. Like, thank you so much. Because, yeah, when you see them, you're not used to seeing. I mean, we look at shirts that are laying down flat all the time. And that kind of goes back to the mock-ups, that if I'm providing a mock-up internally to a screen printer or somebody in a heat press production workflow, I am going to give them a flat mock-up. If I'm giving a customer a mock-up, I'm going to give them a ghosted or a model shot. Because you have, I mean, at least me, I wear a large or an extra large shirt, depending on what brand it is, but there's 5 to 6 inches from the side of my body to the side seam. That's on the side of me. Humans go out before they start going this way, or at least I do. So I know that there's a lot there on that side seam. And I've seen so many times in mock-ups that when I'm running a production, workflow, and I'll tell people, or I'll send the mock-up off and go, it's 11 inches wide, which I know is going to be, nice sized. They look at it and go, can we make it bigger? It's like, do you want it to go to the side, or do you want it to be on the front of the body? So that's why I'll show customers that they don't care what it looks like flat. They care what it looks like when it's going to be warm, when it's going to be out there. This is their logo. This is their brand or whatever, right?
It's even more complicated, I would say. So if we really have a sensitive project, the mock-up's one thing, but even when you get to the sampling phase, we take a close-up, which most shirts, if you look at it close-up like that, you get arrested or slapped at least. And then, there's close-up, and then there's a distance. Someone holding it up, we do that, and then wearing it. So it would be a close-up shot of the print, a print from like 6 feet away, which is the normal, like acceptable way most people are going to look at your
distance.
shirt, and then also on a person. And that, that really shows what it's going to look like. No one thing is going to show what it's going to look like.
Yep. But again, that's building that trust. It's being a source that your customer could come to say, like, yes, like, I trust this guy. He knows what he's doing, right? And
I mean, you're talking with transfers, a lot of expensive garments. So you are taking photos to get approval before you run them all, I hope. And when you do, you want to take accurate photos, like I just said. And if you think that the photos aren't accurate color-wise, you already got what monitor they're looking at. Sometimes we lay a Pantone book next to it so they can see, like, what the colors are besides the print.
And that plays a big role into it too, because you mentioned, like, even looking at your phone, right? I got the biggest thing, like, where, I mean, a lot of, like, the design work I used to do was the middle of the night. So, like, I'm a night owl. I'm sending, number one, like, people hit me up on, like, Facebook Messenger, right? So it's already degrading the quality, but it's the middle of the night, so they have their night mode turned on, and the screen is kind of like that yellow tinge, and you're sending them, like, design proofs, or like, hey, here's this, like, photo, and they're like, oh, the color's off. Like, it's your phone. It's your screen. Like, right? It changes so much, and so using that, like, Pantone reference, like, this is your color red. Look how this looks. That really brings them, I mean, at ease.
Closer,
yes.
To it, yep.
Helps them understand. All right, we'll get through the rest of the list here. We only got a couple more. I know we can't be here all day. I'd love to sit here and talk all day. I like talking with you, Rick. So the other one here, we got 2 more. Especially with heat printing, I think because you see such, a low investment, right? That they think, like, there is no, the big mistake is not doing a cost analysis and just setting prices. The easiest way to do it is, what does the garment cost? What does the transfer cost? Multiply it by times 2. So if a shirt is $3, the transfer costs $2, it's $5 to make it. That is not leaving my door for less than $10, right? Now you get into wholesale scenarios, but when you do that, you need to ensure that you have a good enough margin on that. And a lot of people don't look at that business side and start calculating that at all. And so they're letting shirts leave the shop, they're doing a whole bunch of orders, and like, are you profitable? Because then, when you're buying one of these really nice pieces of equipment, right? Obviously, you have a reason for it. You know how much it's going to cost you, and then you're chasing that investment back down to make it worthwhile. And so you probably have already done a cost analysis. When you could get into apparel decorating for $1,000 or less, right? So like you could be producing on demand, you know what the transfer costs, you know what the blank costs, and yes, you want to be, you need to be calculating overhead if you want to be like actually making tons of money, and knowing that you're going to be profitable, and knowing you're going to be successful, knowing that you have enough to cover the Adobe subscription and the power bill, or if you're using a part of your home, that you're accounting for that part of the mortgage.
And the 50 jackets you ruin next week.
And the 50 jackets you're going to ruin next week that you need to eat for a customer. But some of that is just doing business too, because like, especially when you're just getting started, and say you're decorating to a school or something, and one person goes, I need to exchange this size. If you say, oh, no returns, no exchanges, sorry, this is on you, that could possibly jeopardize that entire relationship, where like, eat the $10, eat the $5 if that's the cost of the t-shirt, and just provide that customer service. Because
as long as you made enough money in the first place.
as long as you made enough money in the first place. So the easiest way is doubling the cost of it. That's what I tell a lot of decorators just starting out. But as soon as you can, start doing time studies. Pay yourself, because that's what like I even struggled with when I was doing a ton of freelance design, right? So like I did not value my time. And when I first started realizing like I needed to value my time, I started to learn how to say no, and I started to really empower myself to be more successful and make more money by saying no, and not taking not taking into consideration all of this stuff that would actually cost me money. And that allows you to say, like, those really picky customers, you could fire them. That say, like, no, I want it to be within an 1/8 inch of this. And you're like, I'm never going to do that. You're not going to be satisfied with whatever I could produce. So, well, you should go find another printer. And then it's not worth your time. So a great thing to go in there. And I only have one more comment, or one more point to our top 10 mistakes. And this is kind of relevant to heat printing too, is not utilizing the aspect of being able to print on demand. Because traditionally we saw print on demand blow up 10 years ago, 14 years ago, somewhere in that range, when direct to garment really became palatable and obtainable by a lot of people. But now with heat printing, it's more easy than ever to get into on-demand decoration by not having to do a bulk run. It's one of the best benefits of it. You don't have to do a bulk run up front. You could run an online store. Like, there's plenty of people around here who are selling platforms that are online stores. Really easy and effective to get into, that's super affordable. And then you're able to stock garments, stock transfers, use those for a variety of customers, and not have to do that big bulk run up front, especially for like schools or organizations, onboarding, corporate stores. You could do all of this stuff that's just so low risk, where you could go out and get more customers and really leverage the power of your heat press. So I see so many decorators looking at it and just being like, nah, I just do bulk fulfillment, or I'll do like ones and twosies, and like, it's so much easier if you set up, especially when you get 2 or 3 stores that you're like fulfilling for. It's game over, because then you're using the same blanks. They're common blanks you're stocking. You're using sometimes the same transfer or gang sheeting it, so it's all that you're spreading the cost over everything. Low risk for you, low risk for your customer, and then you're just raking in profit, because when you're selling those ones and twos, but you're set up for it, I mean, your profit margins are higher than anything else.
Amen. All right, questions out there?
Okay, I've got 2 noob questions. One, when you're laying out the garment, so I come from screen printing, very new to transfers. An issue I've had with transfers is centering the art, or knowing if you're threading the garment straight. A lot of people just lay the garment on top of the... Any tips for getting it like straightened? Because I'm very much familiar with the feel of loading the garment on. The garment is straight and threaded on the pallet, and then the image I've lined up to the... Anyways.
So depending on the platen that you have, there are some, and I came from plastisol screen printing too, so I got real used to loading garments, but the platens or pallets that I was using, it's platens, right? Some people call them pallets.
It's really platens.
Pallets are wooden and sit on the floor, but essentially those kind of had that triangle shape, right? So I was able to like center it on the neck. So I love the heat printing platens that do have that like neck shape and shoulder shape to be able to align those garment seams, but very similar to, I mean, usually you have the spray tack and you can't necessarily slide onto it. So being able to slide directly on, what I'll do is on a side seam garment, grab those side seams, go all the way on. So put that collar on the platen, because if you could line up those shoulder seams, say, to the regular heat press platen, that's that big rectangle, right? Bodies aren't rectangular, but you could line these shoulder seams up directly to that line. And if I know that those are squared, it's not twisted, and I pushed as hard as I could to take the garment or the side seams down to the back side of the platen, when I roll it back up and the collar off, I know I'm going to be centered and squared and straight. Now, another thing that you have the liberty to do a little bit, I mean, I used to do it when I would screen print as well, is look at the side seams and just look at the distance down. Is it parallel to the top side of that platen as you're looking down, like on the side of the press? Some styles, like the polo that I'm wearing now, it actually is a little bit wider at the bottom than it is up here. So it's a little bit more fitted of a style like in this upper body. So it's going to droop a little bit when I look at it at the side. So instead of being parallel with the top of the platen, it droops a little bit as it goes down. But as long as that's equal on each side, I know that it's not twisted, because that twisting you see a lot with loading. And then another thing is grabbing the armpits. So if it's a tubular tee, you have that like manufacturer fold that you kind of see that crease in there a little bit. Trust but verify always on those. Sometimes you'll even have the center line that you could see, and like that's an easy way if you know that center line's straight, but I'll always verify and go, all right, I loaded this how I was used to loading it. It should be straight, and then you see it going straight, like, okay. But then check the armpits. So I'll grab where the side seam or where the armpit seam meets the under seam of the sleeve, and then just push it out each way. It's kind of hard to show it on not a heat press, but essentially like hold it down so you could see this clear defined edge on both sides. So when you're looking at it, and you could just eyeball to see like, oh, this one looks about 2 inches, this one looks about 3 inches. Let's move it over this way a little bit so you're able to get the top of the shirt squared up as well as the bottom of the shirt. And you said you had another question then too.
Okay, so we also have a heat transfer press for hats, which is curved. How do you keep the transfer from like sliding around? Because a lot of times the transfer sheet itself will be curled or curved. If it's something requiring like perfect symmetry, how do you keep that fixed in the spot you want it? You have to.
So for some of those, depending on what press you have, right? So if you have one with, say, like a lower heated platen, what I will do is, I mean, my hands are ruined from working in restaurants. I've been an artist my entire life, so I've worked in a lot of restaurants and in the kitchen, and also with heat transfers and with flash dryers. My hands are pretty much numb. But if you have a lower heated platen on your press, you could hold the transfer there for a second, and it's going to tack. So you're going to start to activate that adhesive real easy. So then you just hold it there, and it starts to tack on. You're set, good to go, right? However, if you don't have a lower heated platen, you don't want to get that tack there, or maybe you're printing on, say, like polos, right? So not hats, or like you're just doing small decorations on that press as well. Thermotape. So there's specific tape designed for heat transfer printing where it's not going to melt under high heat. It's not going to leave a residue behind when you peel it hot or peel it cold away from the fabric, because that's the worst is like when you're using tape. But this tape is specifically designed to hold down heat transfers on a variety of different fabrics and materials to keep it in place. And so we've seen a lot of decorators using that, say, for left chest placements, because yes, when your question about like knowing the sizing of it straight, when you get a 2X or 3X shirt on one of those, there's a lot of extra fabric that's around, and that gets really hard. So you only see this 16 by 20 area or 11 by 14 area of what your platen size is. So laying all of, say, the polos, we're doing something like what I'm wearing right now, you lay all of these polos down, you could measure based on seeing all of the entire garment, put the logo on there, tape it down all flat, and then you come back to the heat press and it's just on press. On press, and then as you're peeling the carrier away, you're peeling the tape away, not leaving any residue behind. And usually you'll see that tape as like a blue or like a, I don't know, almost like a copper.
Yeah. You can also reuse the tape a lot of times.
You can, yes.
So you're not using a ton.
Yeah. It's also not, it's more expensive than like Scotch tape. I don't know
It's
if
not
it's
crazy expensive, yeah. And then
3M
you also-
Scotch tape come holiday time is
Depends
really
what
expensive.
you're doing. If you're on the curve, sometimes one piece will kind of be enough. You don't even need two. You have to check it out.
Yeah, just to kind of like hold it there. For like a lot of dimensional stuff, if you're using like real thick silicone or any like emblems, those embroidered patches, the leathers as like heat transfer application, those usually like one strip across the entire thing is going to hold it perfectly in place, and you won't have to worry about it moving at all.
We're offering a special 3 for the cost of 2 questions if you have another.
But I'd be happy to show you hands-on on a heat press to kind of look at some of those techniques that I talked about, sizing or like placement and making sure you're not twisted or anything. With both side seam garments, we could look at other ones too.
Other transfer questions for Mr. Connor here? Any questions, folks?
All right, I have a question. So is there some sort of show where we could watch all about a shop going through struggles and how to conquer running their heat press department better?
This sounds like a little self-promotional. Thanks, Marshall. Yes, there is. It's called the Heat Press Transformation. It features Marshall Atkinson and myself. It is debuting next Wednesday as our second episode with JC Pro Design, Justin Leader, a great shop out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we'll be doing, that one's coming out Wednesday the 20th on Stalls TV YouTube channel. And it's a 30-minute episode that I just saw the final cut for, and I'll show it for you. I'll give you the sneak preview, Marshall, or maybe you'll just have to wait. I'll send it to you. It's fantastic.
Other questions? All right, Dave will stick around for a minute, and then he's at the Stalls booth, and he's approachable. He hardly ever has bitten anyone, and he knows a lot. One reason I have people up here for Shop Talks, they're people you can trust that will give you accurate information. They're not just trying to sell you crap. And Dave is an honest guy, and so that's why he's up here. Just say that. Because everyone in this space is not.
Well, thank you, Rick. I really do appreciate it.
So there you go. So anyway, I want to thank our sponsors again, because otherwise this would not be free. Los Angeles Apparel, Hirsch, Fairweather Johnson, AlphaBroder, Stalls, and Resupply make this possible. Check out our In Kitchen YouTube channel where this will eventually appear, and it will still be free. All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.